run through of the session today. So LIUPC is the largest partnership between the UK government and UNDP globally. It's a program co-funded by the UK, UNDP and Ministry of Local Government. We are working in 19 cities across Bangladesh with 3 million urban poor and climate vulnerable people. The program, it has a very integrated approach to how it helps the life and livelihood of the urban poor people. It works at household level to improve the well-being by providing livelihood, food, nutrition support. At community level, we are working on gender issues, stopping violence against women, and then it engages the community to identify with the municipalities and city corporations to identify their own problems within the community and then find solutions for it through a community action plan. And that's the approach we are following in NUPRP. And the beauty of this program is that it has been able to empower women leaders across across the 19 cities who are able to negotiate negotiate with their municipality and local government to access basic service that they're entitled for. The program's overall ambition is not only to cover the 19 cities we are currently working in, but the program is designed in a way where the leadership stays within the Ministry of Local Government and can be scaled up. There are promising, locally led adaptation practices that will inform government of Bangladesh, how things can be done differently in a more climate resilient and inclusive manner. And we hope that you will be able to make the most of today's session and take something away from it. A model that was developed through the program, we're very hopeful that it can be scaled up elsewhere in Bangladesh as well as globally. So today's session, however, is entirely dedicated to locally led adaptation, although we are doing other things as well in the program. This is one of the strengths of NUPRP or LIUPC. We have a presentation from the program team today, and then we have a panel discussion. We are also very fortunate to have our new development director, Mr. Matt Cannell, who I can see on screen just now, and Van Eugen from UNDP, who's the acting resident rep of UNDP. So with this note, I really hope that you enjoyed today's session, and able to learn something new from it. Let me hand over to Matt to make some opening remarks. Matt, can I invite you on screen to open the session, please? Over to you.
Thanks, Farzana, and good afternoon, colleagues. I hope everyone can hear me okay. And many thanks for spending the time with us today. It's a real pleasure to be here at the second Gobeshona Global Conference on Local-Led Adaptation. I'm the new Development Director here at the British High Commission. And I have just arrived the last 2 weeks, but I've actually lived in Bangladesh for the last year and a half. Can everyone see me okay? Can I just check my screen's gone black?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, so I've been living in Bangladesh for the last year and a half, and it's a real pleasure to start working here very closely with the government of Bangladesh and also the very vibrant international and civil service partners across a range of issues. I mean, I'll be very brief because I think let's get into the discussion as soon as we can. Just to say a few points up front. I mean, obviously climate change is a kind of existential crisis for all of humankind. The UK, obviously with our COP presidency and Glasgow, but we've been a long-term supporter of this agenda and at a global level, but it's also a really important part of our portfolio here in Bangladesh. It's one of our core 5 focus areas. But actually climate issues run through many of our programs, whether that's humanitarian or economic growth. So I'm really pleased to see the level of focus we have in our portfolio and how we're cooperating with government and our partners. And that's the important part I see with this LIUPC program, the Livelihoods Improvement in Urban Poor Communities Project. I'm still getting my head around the acronym for that, but it's partnership, and that's the important part of addressing local adaptation, working in partnership with the government, local Ministry of Government, and UNDP, of course. And that, I think, is as much as the strength, bringing in those voices together to really look at individual local adaptation needs. I don't need to tell this panel about the opportunities or risks of urbanization. In previous roles, I've worked in some of our bigger megacity problems around the world. And I think that it's that paradox, really, that urbanization can drive growth and stimulus the economy, but also there's some real challenges around rapid urbanization that we're seeing in relation to climate. So here in Bangladesh, 65% of GDP is generated from urban areas. So there's a real centralization. By 2050, 50% of the population is likely to be living in urban areas. And we also know that some of the challenges around urban is really affecting the more disadvantaged and the poorest. So in the last decade, we've seen poverty significantly reduce across rural areas, but urban poverty has stagnated. And so that's why we really think that this program in particular can really look at innovative and catalytic interventions to help change and take further action. Obviously, at the global level, there's huge focus on temperature discussions, so temperature rises and sea levels. But we strongly think that there needs to be a stronger focus on adaptation, particularly at a local level. And so I'm really happy to see this event in my first week, and I want to continue to engage on these issues during my time in the next 3 years. I think from where we see the sort of the need for change is actually there's a real need for a step change in local-led adaptation. Although we're building from a strong foundation, we think national governments, local governments, the public and private funders, and multilateral and international organizations really need to take a step change of how they finance. Yes, we need large, big infrastructure projects, but actually there's a lot more we can do around local level engagement. And I think there's interested investment on a small scale infrastructure that can bring about tangible impact at the community level is something that we feel is a bit missing. Just last few points to say around, we strongly feel that Bangladesh is actually leading the way on some of these issues. So there are many emerging practices that are coming out of Bangladesh that we think are really interesting to look at. So adaptive agricultural practices around saline tolerant paddy fields, or floating vegetation, or tidal river management. These are some of the issues that we'll get to talk about and hear more about during this afternoon's discussion. So we think that there's a real opportunity to look at some of the emerging interesting ideas that's coming out of LIUPC to scale up across a broader area. So with that, I would just reiterate Farzana's comment that I hope you enjoyed today's session. I particularly think we want to challenge and test ourselves and hear from a variety of voices. I think it's always good to debate and discuss these sorts of issues. But from my perspective, in my first week, I'm really happy that these events are starting to take place, and we have this strong foundation to build from LIUPC. So just to say thank you to the panel members for taking part in today, and I look forward to hearing the discussion and working with you over the coming 3 or 4 years. Thank you. I think I'm now going to Yogesh, project manager, or back to you, Farzana.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Matt, for your valuable insights, but also your early ownership to the program. I mean, with your leadership, we hope that our ability to grow the partnership between UK and Bangladesh will grow even further. So now let's hear from the program team, and let's see a presentation from Yogesh Pradhanang, who is the International Project Manager for LIUPC. Yogesh, can you come on screen, please?
Thank you, Parag. Okay. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Farzana, for joining. So As Fazana said, my name is Yogesh and looking after the LIPC project as a project manager, and would like to share our experience on the local-led adaptation in Bangladesh. Next slide, please. So just to give a brief background of the project, I don't want to give a very detailed information. Farzana has already mentioned. So LIPC is a flagship urban development program of UNDP with FCDO being the principal donor, and it is being implemented by UNDP in partnership with the government of Bangladesh, include at the 19 towns and cities with the local government. And the program reaches out to growing number of the climate vulnerable urban poor people who are often already climate displaced. And the LIPC maintains an extensive reach and network involving, as Farzana said, 3.1 million beneficiaries on the ground, with the ultimate target of the 4 million across the 19 cities of Bangladesh. Next slide, please. Can you make the smaller on the right-hand side screen so that everybody can see the presentation? Fahad, right?
I think you have to minimize that individually.
Individual, right? Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay. The project approach integrates climate resilience as a major focus and is completely driven by the community-led efforts in the adaptation process. As a part of this, the project conducted assessment and studies to learn of the vulnerability and the poverty context. The urban poor are then mobilized and empowered to formulate their community action plan in a participatory approach. The project provides a technical assistance to implement the local-led small to medium scale climate resilient infrastructure, including improvement of their shelter. Further, they are also supported to improve their livelihood, which would eventually enable them to cope better against socioeconomic shocks induced by the harsh and the climate events. Through the partnership with the local government, the communities are able to utilize the project platform to voice their challenges and the community-driven solution to a local city authority, which has not only helped them improve their well-being, but also secure an integrated approach with the local government agenda to bring about the sustainable change at their communities. The project has focused on empowering women and the girls to lead its initiative, who are not only working on the building locally adapted climate resilience, but in the process have also improved their livelihood and economic condition across the generation. So next slide, please. As a part of a holistic and evidence-based approach to build climate resilient in urban post-settlement, LIPCP used proven scientific tools, including climate change and vulnerability assessment, participated poverty mapping, multi-dimensional poverty index, etc., as displayed in the screen. So if you see in the right-hand side, you can see the CCBA, or the climate change vulnerable assessment of the chart tool, and the left-hand side you can see the example of the Memansingh poverty mapping over there. So these are the tools we are using. So I will not go the details, the tools you can see also in the screen. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. As a part of the project flagship component, we developed small to medium scale climate adaptive infrastructure, which are designed to mitigate the impact of climate related shocks. These range from the drainage infrastructure, critical to prevent waterlogging, but also adaptation, including raised walkway, platforms, and bridges, which provide safe access even during the harsh climate events. Further, the adaptations allow the urban poor to continue access to the safe drinking water, especially in high saline areas, and they use other wash facilities. You can see the detailed activities what we are doing in the right-hand side. The key feature of the implementation process is that it is conducted in the community-led contracting process, which not only reduce cost significantly, but also promote locally led solutions and provide livelihood opportunity. This also creates a greater ownership by the community for the sustainability of the intervention, the running of an operation and maintenance fund established by the community themselves for the ground upkeep. With the project close partnership, the local government have also contributed financially to the community-led works on the climate adaptation, ranging from 10 to 25%, which may be also shared by our Honorable Mayor from the Chatpur. This model presents itself and as an example to the local governments on the ways to work on local-led adaptation even after exit of the project. Next slide, please. Yeah, you can see some example of before and after the scenario of the community-led intervention. So see in the bottom and the up. So bottom, what is before, and the up, how the women are getting benefited and smiling with the community-led climate resilient infrastructure. And in the middle, it is of the Cox's Bazar, and then the right-hand side, it is of the Chattogram. You can see the before and after. So next slide, please. The program also features a self-sustaining climate resilient housing finance for the urban poor to improve the condition of their shelter and to make more resilient against the climate hazards through a climate housing development fund. And climate housing development fund functions as a revolving community housing fund for the urban poor and will run as a cooperative in the long term. This not only enables them to improve their everyday well-being, but also saves a lot of finance otherwise spent to repair their low quality shelter after each monsoon or hazards. So you can see in the left-hand side, the original conditions of one of the community housing. Through the CSDF, after taking the loan, it is on the process how they are building the climate resilient infrastructure, climate resilient community housing. So basically this CSDF, we are modeling in the 3 cities, and based on the success, we are expanding the other cities too. Next slide, please. The LIPC through Government of Bangladesh funding is also providing access to permanent shelter to the extremely vulnerable urban poor. So far, the construction of low-cost housing unit have been begun in Gopalganj and is under process of expanding 1,200 units across the other 3 cities. This comprise of the 99-year lease given to the beneficiary by the government with the condition of it not being transformable and sellable. So you can see in the right-hand side some of the example of the model of the low-cost housing model. Yeah, next slide, please. The learning and the best practices from the LIPC has a big scope for further use and expansion in the urban context of Bangladesh and beyond. The community center approach to locally led adaptation has worked very successfully. Firstly, the LIPC-driven practice of mobilization and the organization of the community members to develop action plans and be part of the change-making process to make their communities more climate resilient has been very effective. Further, the partnership with the local authority have not only made the urban poor visible, but also provide the wider scope for further development agenda as integrated in the local government response linking with the other development partners. As a way forward to the expand, we have recognized the importance of solid waste management, including plastic waste, as a direct contributor to waterlogging and flooding, affecting in the sustainable management of drainage networks, and the local environment. So there is a huge scope of the expanding of the with the community-led adaptation on the solid waste management too. So the last one is there are also other one like building ownership of the project model with the local and national government to ensure the sustainability of intervention for the further expansion. So by the government as well as other development agency. So I will just request Farah to play the video. Let's watch the video showing some example of our community-led climate resilient efforts.
Bangladesh is widely recognized as one of the most climate vulnerable countries in the world, and climate change poses a consistent threat to its development. Aside from storm surges, floods, cyclones, and landslides, unseen effects of climate change, such as an increase of salinity intrusion, are having a grave impact on local agricultural economies. An increase in both the frequency and intensity of such hazards are causing further displacements of communities from the rural and coastal areas to larger cities. With a worsening climate change situation, this practice of migrating from rural to urban centres is increasingly becoming a common coping strategy. They mostly end up in densely populated urban slums and unplanned settlements as climate refugees. With a lack of infrastructure and access to basic amenities, people are forced to embrace extreme poverty and remain unprotected from further climate hazards in cities too.
খালের পানি যে সময় রাস্তায় আসে, রাস্তাতে আমাদের বাড়ির ভিতরে যায়, তখন আমাকে লেকটিনি আমাকে যাওয়ার কোনো কায়দা থাকে না। আমাকে কোনোটা অসুস্থ হলো আমরা বেরোনোর কোনো রাস্তা নেই।
To mitigate the problem, the government of Bangladesh, with support from the UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office and UNDP Bangladesh, has been implementing the National Urban Poverty Reduction Programme since 2018. These solutions are sensitive to the needs of women and persons with disabilities to provide better access to livelihood and basic sanitation. The NUPRP is also supporting the government to make safe, climate-resilient infrastructures like embankments, slope walls, drainage networks, raised walkways, and small bridges. With NUPRP's support, the local government and the vulnerable communities are jointly implementing measures to ensure a holistic development approach so that no one is left behind. This is how the government of Bangladesh, with the support from the FCDO and UNDP, is continuing to fight climate change and address challenges around rising urban poverty.
Thank you. Just ending off with a happy photo of urban community who are supported by the local community frontliner to register for the COVID-19 vaccine registration and the delivery. So over to Farzana.
Thank you so much, Yogesh, for this excellent presentation and the really touchy video just after it. So if there are questions on the presentation, can I request participants to either use the chat bar to post them or hold on to them until we move to the Q&A session after the panel discussion. Now is the time to hear some of the voices from the field. We have today joined with us two women leaders from the communities. who are going to share their valuable experience of LIUPC and how, together with the municipalities, they have actually brought about changes. Can I invite Morshada Akhtar from Chattogram City Corporation, who is a community leader in one of the clusters that we work in?
আসসালামু আলাইকুম, উপস্থিতি সকলকে শুভেচ্ছা জানাচ্ছি।
ওয়ালাইকুম আসসালাম মুর্শিদা আপা, আপনার শুভেচ্ছা গ্রহণ করলাম। আপনি যদি একটু আমাদেরকে আপনার অভিজ্ঞতা শেয়ার করেন, উপস্থিত যারা আছেন তারা খুবই আপনার অভিজ্ঞতা থেকে অনেক কিছু পাবে। আমি পরবর্তীতে এটা ইংলিশে ট্রান্সলেট করে দেব। Participants, Murshida Akhtar will share her experience now and I will translate it in English. I will summarize it in English later on. Murshida আপা, জি বলুন।
গুড মর্নিং। আপনারা জানেন যে পৃথিবীর অনেক দেশ জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনের ঝুঁকিতে আছে, তার মধ্যে আমাদের বাংলাদেশ অন্যতম। আবার বাংলাদেশের যে সকল অঞ্চলগুলো জলবায়ুর ঝুঁকিতে আছে তার মধ্যে চট্টগ্রাম শহর অন্যতম। আমাদের চট্টগ্রাম শহর পাহাড়, নদী, সমুদ্র দ্বারা পরিবেষ্টিত। এই শহরে একটি পাহাড়ি এলাকা বিজয়নগর সরারপাড়। আমি মুর্শিদা আক্তার এই সিডিসি প্রায় 720 পরিবারের সাথে এখানেই বসবাস করছি। বাংলাদেশের সবচেয়ে জলবায়ু ঝুঁকি থাকা শহর ভোলা, বরিশাল, নোয়াখালী, সিরাজগঞ্জ, হাতিয়া, সন্দ্বীপের মতো জায়গা থেকে এসে এইসব মানুষগুলো এখানে বসবাস করছে। এইসব মানুষ এক জায়গায় জলবায়ুর ঝুঁকি তারা খেয়ে অন্য জায়গায় বসবাস করছে, সেটা হলো দুই পাহাড়ের পাদদেশ। ঝড় বৃষ্টি আসলে দুই পাহাড়ের ঢল ময়লা আবর্জনা সহ আমাদের ঘরে ভিতর ঢুকে পড়ে। তার পাহাড় ধসের আতঙ্কে বসবাস করতে হয়। পা পিছলে খেয়ে হাত পা ভেঙে যায়, গর্ভবতী মায়েরা মারাত্মক জখম হয়। এই অবস্থায় আমরা একটা প্রকল্পের অন্তর্ভুক্ত হই, সেটা হলো ইউএনডিপি বাংলাদেশ সরকার এবং FCDO এর আর্থিক সহায়তায় পরিচালিত হচ্ছে। এই প্রকল্প প্রধান যে কাজটি আমাদের জন্য করেছে সেটি হলো আমাদেরকে সাহস জুগিয়েছে কিভাবে আমরা বেঁচে থাকবো, কিভাবে নিজেকে রক্ষা করব। অর্থাৎ আমরা যে সাহস, আমার যে সাহস আছে সেটা আমি বুঝতে পেরেছি এই প্রকল্পের সাথে অন্তর্ভুক্ত হওয়ার পর এবং এই প্রকল্প যে কাজটি আমি যে কাজটি করছি সেটি জলবায়ু সহিষ্ণু যে পরিবর্তনের সাথে খাপ খেয়ে বেঁচে থাকার জন্য কি কি করণীয় তার একটা অ্যাকশন প্ল্যান করেছি এবং সেই অনুযায়ী কাজ করছি। যেমন ড্রেন করেছি বিশাল আকারে, এখন আর আমাদের ঘরের ভিতর পাহাড়িয়া ডল ঢুকে না। আবার আমরা পাহাড়ে ওঠার সিঁড়ি করেছি, গাইডলাইন করেছি, যার ফলে পাহাড় থেকে এখন আর কেউ হাত পা ভাঙে না, গর্ভবতী মায়েদের বাচ্চা নষ্ট হয় না। আমরা স্বাস্থ্যসম্মত টয়লেট করেছি বজ্র স্বাস্থ্যসম্মত জায়গায় রাখার জন্য। সহজ চলাচলের জন্য রাস্তা করেছি। আমরা ব্যবসা সহায়তা দিয়েছি মানুষের রোজগার বৃদ্ধির জন্য, কিশোরীদের সুস্থ ও শারীরিক মানসিক বিকাশের জন্য আমরা কাজ করছি এবং বাড়িগুলোকে জলবায়ু সহিষ্ণু করে মেরামত ও নূতনভাবে করছি। আমরা দক্ষতা বৃদ্ধি প্রশিক্ষণ দিয়েছি, ছেলে মেয়েদের শিক্ষা উপবৃত্তি দিয়েছি। তাছাড়া বাল্য বিবাহ, পারিবারিক সহিংসতা বন্ধের জন্য বিভিন্ন উদ্যোগ গ্রহণের কাজ করে যাচ্ছি। এখন আমরা আল্লাহর রহমতে অনেক ভালো আছি এবং সুস্থ একটা পরিবেশে বসবাস করছি। এছাড়া এই যে জলবায়ু, আমাদের ভবিষ্যৎ পরিকল্পনা হলো জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনের সাথে নিজেকে খাপ খেয়ে কিভাবে বেঁচে থাকবো সেটার জন্য আমরা কৌশল শিখেছি এবং আমরা সেগুলোকে অন্য জায়গার মানুষদের ভিতরে ছড়িয়ে দেওয়ার জন্য ছড়িয়ে দিতে চাই। আপনাদেরকে ধন্যবাদ আমার কথা শোনার জন্য। আপনাদের কোনো প্রশ্ন থাকলে আমাকে করতে পারেন। ধন্যবাদ।
আপনাকে অনেক অনেক ধন্যবাদ মোর্শেদা আপা, আপনার অভিজ্ঞতা শেয়ার করার জন্য আমাদের সাথে। আমি এখন জাস্ট একটু সংক্ষেপে ইংরেজিতে অনুবাদ করে দিচ্ছি যারা আছেন এখানে বাংলা ভাষাভাষী নন তাদের জন্য। So colleagues and participants, basically I'll quickly summarize Morsheda's experience. I mean, she comes from Chattogram and she lives in a community with 720 other households who are basically predominantly climate migrants from around the country who have lost their life or livelihood in their own hometown and have moved to Chattogram for living. Their community is surrounded by 2 hills and they live in between. So Chattogram is also, as many of you know, is vulnerable to cyclone and other climatic events. So she said how her community suffered in absence of a proper road and communication to the city. And with the help of the project, they actually received a road with drainage facilities as well as waste management facilities and street lights and everything. So with the project's help and the city corporation's help, they have actually been able to identify their own problems and bring about solutions to those as well. So she appreciated the project and she looks forward to sharing the knowledge to become more climate resilient to others. And another thing she mentioned was that actually through this process, what they've got is the empowerment and the dignity. With that note, she concluded, if there are questions for Morsheda, we can take them during the Q&A session again, or you can post them in the chat bar. We'll invite you during the Q&A. Thank you so much, Morsheda Appa. I'm now going to invite another beneficiary to quickly share her experience as well. So can I invite Fatima Akhtar, a community leader from Chatpur municipality, to come and share her experience? Can I invite Fatima? Looks like it's taking some time to. Walaikum assalam, Fatima. আপনি আমাদের এই সেশনে অংশগ্রহণ করার জন্য অনেক অনেক ধন্যবাদ। আমরা একটু সময়ের স্বল্পতায় আছি, আপনি যদি একটু সংক্ষেপে আপনার অভিজ্ঞতা শেয়ার করেন আমাদের সাথে, যে LIUPC প্রজেক্টের সাথে আপনার সম্পর্ক কি বা আপনার অভিজ্ঞতা কি, একটু যদি সংক্ষেপে শেয়ার করেন তাহলে আমি পরবর্তীতে ইংরেজিতে অনুবাদ করে দেব। Participants, we have Fatima Akhtar from Chatpur municipality. As like before, I will summarize in English. I've asked her to share her experience. Thank you.
আসসালামু আলাইকুম, আমি ফাতেমা আক্তার, সাধারণ সম্পাদক সিডিসি টাউন ফেডারেশন চাঁদপুর পৌরসভা চাঁদপুর। ধন্যবাদ ফারজানা ম্যাম আমাকে এই ফোরামে কথা বলতে সুযোগ দেওয়ার জন্য। আমার কাছে জানতে চাওয়া হয়েছে যে এই প্রজেক্টের সাথে আমার সম্পর্ক কি এবং আমি কিভাবে আমরা কাজগুলো করতেছি। তো তার আগে এই প্রজেক্টের সাথে সম্পর্কটা হওয়ার আগে আমি চাঁদপুর সম্বন্ধে কিছু বলতে চাচ্ছি। যে এই প্রজেক্ট যখন ছিল না তখন এর আগে চাঁদপুরের চারদিকে কিন্তু নদী আছে, আমরা নদীর পাশেই বসবাস করি। সেই কারণে আমরা নদী ভাঙ্গনের শিকার হই এবং জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনের ফলে যে ঘূর্ণিঝড়, টর্নেডো, যে সমস্ত আবহাওয়াজনিত সমস্যাগুলো হয়, সবচেয়ে বড় প্রভাবই কিন্তু চাঁদপুরে পড়ে। আমরা যখনই ঝড় বৃষ্টি হয়, জোয়ারে, আমরা যেখানে বসবাস করি, জোয়ারে ওই জায়গাতে পানি এসে জমে যায়, কিন্তু ভাটাতে আর ওই পানিগুলো যায় না। না যাওয়ার ফলে সূর্যের তাপে যতদিন না এই পানি শুকায় ততদিন পর্যন্ত আমরা ওই পানিতেই বসবাস করি এবং ওই পানির আশেপাশে মশা মাছি বিভিন্ন জীবাণু সৃষ্টি হয় এবং পানিবাহিত রোগে মানুষ আক্রান্ত হয়, চর্মরোগের সৃষ্টি হয়। তার পাশাপাশি হচ্ছে যেহেতু আমরা নদী ভাঙ্গনের শিকার, আমাদের আশেপাশে শরীয়তপুর, ফরিদপুর, বরিশাল বিভিন্ন জায়গা থেকে খেটে খাওয়া মানুষ দিনমজুর হিসেবে চাঁদপুরে এসে বসবাস করা শুরু করে। পুরানবাজার যেহেতু চাঁদপুরে পুরানবাজার একটি বাণিজ্যিক কেন্দ্র, সেখানে সবাই নদী যেহেতু কাছে, মাছ ধরতে পারে, যে জাল বানাইতে পারে, এই সমস্ত কাজ করার জন্যই তারা নদীর ভাঙনের শিকার হয়ে নদীর কাছাকাছিতেই থাকে, কারণ তাদের অর্থনৈতিক অবস্থা খুবই খারাপ। এজন্য এখানে আমাদের বসবাস ক্রমশ মানুষ প্রচন্ড বেড়ে গিয়েছিল, যেখানে ঝুলন্ত লেট্রিনের কারণে মানুষ অনেক অস্বাস্থ্যকর পরিবেশে বসবাস করা শুরু হয়েছে। তারপর অস্বাস্থ্য যেন এখানে মানুষ থাকতে পারে না জেনেও এখানে একমাত্র কারণই ছিল যে অল্প টাকায় বসবাস করা যায় এবং কাছাকাছি স্থানে দিনমজুর হিসাবে কাজ করা যায়, এটার জন্য ওইখানে বসবাস করা শুরু করে। আর আমরা ক্রমশ মানে একটা দুর্বিষহ জীবনযাপন করা শুরু করেছিলাম। সামাজিকভাবে, অর্থনৈতিকভাবে সবকিছুতেই আমরা খুব অবহেলিত ছিলাম, কারণ আমাদের যারা আত্মীয় স্বজন ছিল একটু ভালো পজিশনে, সামাজিক ভাবে মর্যাদাপূর্ণ ছিল, তারা আমাদের সাথে কোনো রকম যোগাযোগ করতো না, কারণ আমাদের পরিবেশটা ভালো ছিল না, আমাদের অর্থনৈতিক অবস্থাটা ভালো ছিল না। আমরা সমাজে যেখানে যেতাম আমাদেরকে অবহেলার চোখে দেখতো। সেই ক্ষেত্রে চাঁদপুর পৌরসভার বাস্তবায়নের দিন এই প্রজেক্ট যখন আমাদের কাছে যায় এবং আমাদেরকে বোঝানোর চেষ্টা করে যে পুরুষের পাশাপাশি আপনারা নারীরা যদি সংগঠিত হন তাহলে ভালো কিছু করা যায়। যে জায়গায় একটা গর্ভবতী মা, একটা শিশু সঠিক চিকিৎসা নিতে পারতো না, ভালোভাবে কিভাবে সুস্বাস্থ্য বজায় রাখা যায় সেটা জানতো না, এবং একজন পুরুষ নিয়মিত ইনকাম করতে পারতো না, একদিন কাজ করতে গেলে 3 দিন ওই পানির ভয়ে যাইতো না, আসা যাওয়ার কোনো রাস্তাঘাট ছিল না, সেটার কারণে আমরা ধীরে ধীরে গরিবে পরিণত হই। বাচ্চারা স্কুলে যেতে পারতো না, বাবা মা করতো কি, ছেলে হয়ে জন্মাইলে একটু বড় হইলে বা শিশু শ্রমের শিকার হতো, আর মেয়েরা জন্মগ্রহণ করলে তাদেরকে পড়ালেখা না করে বাল্যবিবাহ দিয়ে দিত। এটাতে আমরা প্রচন্ড হুমকির মুখে ছিলাম। আর সেই ক্ষেত্রে চাঁদপুর পৌরসভা এবং এই প্রজেক্ট যখন আসে আমাদেরকে বোঝায়, আমরাও তখন পুরুষদের পাশাপাশি আমরা নিজেরা মহিলারা সিদ্ধান্ত নেই যে আমরা মহিলারা চেষ্টা করলে দেখি আমাদের ভাগ্যের চাকাটা ঘুরানো যায় কিনা। তাই আমরা পৌরসভা আর প্রজেক্টের সহযোগিতায় নিজেরা সংগঠিত হই এবং ওয়ার্ড কাউন্সিলর, চাঁদপুর পৌর পরিষদ এবং প্রজেক্টের মাধ্যমে এলাকার গণ্যমান্য ব্যক্তিদের মাধ্যমে আমাদের এই সংগঠনের মাধ্যমে আমরা সমস্যাগুলো চিহ্নিত করি যে আমাদের কমিউনিটিতে কি কি সমস্যা আছে। সেই সমস্যাগুলো আমরা 3 ভাগে ভাগ করি: অবকাঠামো উন্নয়ন সমস্যা, সামাজিক সমস্যা, অর্থনৈতিক সমস্যা। এই সমস্যাগুলো অনেক সমস্যা বের হয়েছে। সেই চিহ্নিত সমস্যা থেকে আমরা CRMF নামে একটি স্কিম হাতে নেই এবং সেই কাজটা বাস্তবায়ন করি, যেটার ফলস্বরূপ FCDO ফারজানা ম্যাম, আনোয়ার স্যার সরজমিনে আমাদের টিম হিসেবে এসে আমাদেরকে সরজমিনে জন স্যার আমাদেরকে দেখে গিয়েছে। আমরা সেই ক্ষেত্রে চাঁদপুরবাসী খুবই সৌভাগ্যবান যে আপনারা আমাদেরকে সুযোগটা দেওয়ার জন্য। এই CRMF কাজটা বাস্তবায়নের পরে নারীরা পুরুষের পাশাপাশি ইনকাম করতে পারে, ঠোঙ্গা বানাইতে পারে, সেলাই কাজ করতে পারে, তারপরে বিভিন্ন আনুষঙ্গিক মুদি দোকান। আমাদের এখন ওই যে CRMF-টা আগের এলাকা আর এখনকার অবস্থা দেখলে বোঝা যায় না। এখন বলা যায় যে চাঁদপুরে যদি আবাসিক কোনো এলাকা থাকে সেটা আমাদের CRMF যেখানে হয়েছে চাঁদপুর পুরান বাজার, মধ্য সিরামদি 3 CDC এবং মেরকাডিস রোড দক্ষিণ CDC, তাই মেঘনা CDC ক্লাস্টারের আওতায়। তাই আমি এই প্রজেক্টের কাছে আন্তরিকভাবে কৃতজ্ঞতা স্বীকার করব যে আমাদেরকে চাঁদপুর পৌরসভার মাধ্যমে এই প্রজেক্ট আরো বেশি যদি কাজ করার সুযোগ দিত, আমরা যেভাবে আজকে সমাজে মাথা উঁচু করে দাঁড়িয়েছি সেভাবে আমরা আরো মানে শেষ পর্যন্ত টিকে থাকতে চাই, জলবায়ু সহনশীল কিছু কাজ করতে চাই, কারণ আমরা নদী ভাঙতিতে আসি ম্যাম। আমাদের মানে এই নদী ভাঙ্গন যতদিন না রোধ হবে ততদিন পর্যন্ত আমরা জানি না কতটুকু পর্যন্ত আগাইতে পারবো। তারপরে আপনাদের সহযোগিতা আমরা চেষ্টা করব আগানোর জন্য। এবং আমাদের এখানে ম্যাম এখন বাল্যবিবাহ হয় না, এটা সবচেয়ে ভালো কথা আর কি।
খুবই ভালো লাগছে শুনে ফাতেমা, আপনাকে অনেক অনেক ধন্যবাদ, অনেক অনেক ধন্যবাদ, অনেক কিছু শেয়ার করলেন। আমাদের সময় আরো বেশি শুনতে ভালো লাগছিল। জি,
আজ সবচেয়ে বড় আমাদের সামাজিক পরিবর্তনটা এমনই হয়েছে যে আমরা পৌর পিতার কাছে, আমাদের পৌর মেয়রের কাছে কৃতজ্ঞ যে আমরা পৌরসভার যে সমস্ত কমিটি আছে সেখানে দরিদ্র জনগোষ্ঠীর প্রতিনিধিত্ব করি এবং ওই জনগোষ্ঠীর কি কি সমস্যা আছে সেই সমস্যাগুলো মেয়র মহোদয়কে বলি, উনি ধৈর্য সহকারে শুনে এবং আমাদের ওই সমস্যাগুলো সমাধান করার চেষ্টা করে। সর্বোপরি আমি চাঁদপুর পৌরসভা, LIUPC, FCDO ও UNDP কে ধন্যবাদ জানাই যে আমাকে অন্তত ঘর থেকে বের করে আনার জন্য এবং আমার মতো হাজারো নারীকে ঘর থেকে বের করে আনার জন্য। ধন্যবাদ।
অনেক অনেক ধন্যবাদ ফাতেমা, অনেক ধন্যবাদ আপনার। সময়ের স্বল্পতার জন্য আমাদের আগাতে হচ্ছে। তো আমি এখন একটু ইংরেজিতে খুব সংক্ষেপে সামারাইজ করব। So participants, I mean, Fatima obviously had a lot to share from her experience in Chatpur town. So she basically started with describing the vulnerability, their community, and the vulnerability of the Chatpur town itself, how it's surrounded by 3 rivers, Dakatia, Podda, and Meghna, and you know how during the time of tide, the water actually got locked into their community, and until it was dried off by sun, with sun, the water would stay on. So their suffering was starting from access to the city. You know, children couldn't go to school, they couldn't take patients to hospital, let alone normal livelihood activities. And then actually, you know, the socio-economic architecture of the community was also greatly suffering due to the problems induced because of the waterlogging primarily. So with the project's help, the community has a flood defense and a road constructed, which has really improved their living condition within the community. Children can go to school, they can do livelihood, and it has also empowered the women within the community to be involved in the decision-making process. She concluded with thanking the mayor, who played a vital role. We visited this community actually a few months ago, who played a vital role, and we are also fortunate to have him today in making sure the community is benefited with this. So with that note, again, participants, if you have any questions, hold on to them until we move on to the Q&A section. So we are now moving to the next segment of the session today, which is a panel discussion. It will be moderated by my colleague, Anwar al-Haq, who is the Social Development Advisor in the British High Commission. And we have a very diverse and range of panel discussing today. We are fortunate to have Professor Nazrul Islam from the Center of Urban Studies. We're very honored to have Mohammad Zillur Rahman Jewel from Mayor of Chatpur Municipality. We have Ashikur Rahman today, who has joined us from Dhaka. He's now with the Islamic Development Bank, but had a long-standing relationship with LIUPC. And we have Anju Sharma from the Global Center of Adaptation. So can I hand over to my colleague, Anwar al-Haq, to moderate the next session, please? Over to you, Anwar bhai.
Thank you, Farjanappa. So as we are running out of time, but we have like really a vibrant panelist here who can discuss a lot of things. So let's try to be brief and let's try to be to the point with the session. So after the excellent presentation and also what we heard from the participants, their experiences in the ground and how their livelihoods and lives have been changed through a community-led approach, but more importantly, which has turned into a climate resilient community for them. So it is great. And what we are hearing is also that there are collaboration happening. We're also have heard that the process is bottom up and there are community action plans and various aspects of it, which is quite encouraging. We have also see that there are potentials around scaling up the whole processes. So there are a lot to discuss, and as mentioned by Farjana, we have a diverse team here to discuss. So let us quickly go to the discussion. We have Mr. Zillur Rahman, who is a champion mayor and who is committed for making his city development process inclusive and resilient. So Mr. Zillur Rahman, we welcome you in this panel discussion. And we have two questions for you actually. One is that, so would you please share very briefly about your experiences on climate resilient work in Jagpur? What are the main challenges that you face there? As a representative, actually, locally, you are locally elected. So how do you see the opportunities offered by this project? And how do you evaluate the collaboration that you are having with local government?
Thank you. Am I listening?
So Zillur bhai, we are having some echo. Can this be solved?
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Am I clear to all?
No, Fahad, can you hear the echo the presenters are facing right now?
Yes, I think the noise is from his end. Zillur bhai, if you kindly could rejoin the session.
So Zillur bhai, we will come back to you later on and please see if the audio problem can be solved. So let's go to our next panelist. Yeah. So Ashikur Rahman bhai, you are here, and thanks. You are joining from Dakar, and we are very glad to have you here. And I do not need to introduce you. You are in Bangladesh. You are part of lots of discussion around urban development, and in fact, you are part of the team who really tried to who designed this project. So it's a pleasure to have you here. And we would like to hear from you about the present gaps and challenges around climate resilient locally adaptation that are happening in the urban context. And we are also seeing that NUPRP is really demonstrating some of the promising models that are coming out. So we heard from the beneficiaries, we have seen the presentation. Now, what would be your 3 recommendations actually to really scale up the promising practices that are coming out from a NUPRP project? Please try to be brief.
Thank you, Bhai. I'm very happy to join in this very distinguished panel, and I'm particularly happy to see Professor Nozul Samsar on this panel, whom of course I speak as a kind of the Bangladesh like the urban authority is contemporary and the urban schools. And just leading institutions for us. Also happy to see the one of the most youngest mayor and dynamic mayor in the Roman field, the honorable mayor of Chaktur, my younger brother. And of course the other panel members.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I think you need to bring your microphone closer.
Cannot hear it.
Oh, you can't hear me.
Sound is not very good.
Let me see what I can do.
Maybe you take use without mic.
Without mic.
Maybe mic problem is there.
Can you hear me now? Yes, can you hear me now?
I can hear you a little bit better than earlier.
Okay. So let me see. I see that the sound is really covered today. So I hope it's improved a little bit. Am I audible?
It's slightly improved, but it just means that you have to speak a little louder than usually.
Yes, I don't know what's wrong.
Ashik bhai, if you can speak a little bit louder.
Right, yeah.
That would work.
Let me try. Thank you, Anwar bhai. Thank you. So, do you think it is your work if I continue like this?
Yes, this is we can do with this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please carry on, Ashik bhai.
Thank you. Thank you, Anwar bhai. I'm happy to join this very distinguished panel today, and I'm particularly happy to see, of course, Professor Nurul Islam sir on the panel, whom I think as a kind of the urban authority in Bangladesh and kind of a leading institution for us. Also happy to join with Zindur Rahman GL, one of the youngest mayor of Bangladesh and dynamic mayor, my younger brother, and also another other distinguished the panel members. And very special thanks to FCDO and UNDP for having me here today. Thank you, Yogesh, also for giving us very excellent presentation. And I do concur basically what you said. And I, at the same time, I also admit that it's not easy to really present the NUPRP or the LIAPC because it is kind of elephant. So it's very difficult to present what the great things the project has been doing at the ground. But of course, indeed, the most powerful part is to hear the community voice because they're always most informative and most powerful than we do. So if I may focus on what you just said, the gaps, the challenges, and the recommendations. Indeed, when it comes to community-led adaptations, I think one of the perceived gaps is that whole the lack of scale. And indeed, when I say scale, it's possibly the issue is compared to the depth and breadth of the complexities and the needs, the response are really not coming to it. And when I say scale, I see the scalability itself also is an issue when it comes to the depth. And in terms of the scalability, there are two factors. What I see is basically should be very kind of a non-negotiable qualifier. One is the cost effectiveness of any community-led approach, and second is the sustainability. And the issue of the cost effectiveness is important because if I'm very critical and many steps and the process we see in terms of community-led process, if it is supported by the external factors, sometimes costs are really not an issue. And that's why we see, and of course, the issue of the sustainability is important. And at the end of the day, that's a kind of primary determinant because what we do see that we often celebrate the early success of the community-led process, but hardly see the kind of end process. So how it sustained is really matters. And that's why when it comes to the adaptation and the community-led adaptations, we see that there are many islands of success. And there are many anecdotes and also the isolated best practices, but we don't see that they're really becoming a trend or really becoming a critical mass. So that aspect is vital to me. And also one more challenge in terms of, if I look at it from a pure urban perspective, I think urban informality is probably one of the big bottlenecks or the challenges when it comes to community-led process and community-led adaptations in particular. And when I say informality, and if I break it down, it's probably manifested with this informal, the settlements, and in particularly the informal land use security, which of course plays a very vital role when it comes to community-led process. And if you could just simply imagine the issues or concepts like Bangladesh, which is of course not unique, it's common in Asia and Africa, that many more slums are on the private land, and which is of course a common phenomenon in Bangladesh. So you could simply imagine that it is the private land in terms of the community cohesion and the community ownership. These are all always very, very challenging kind of sectors. And so that's why, like as a way forward, like a complementary partnership between the communities and the city authorities, particularly in this case, the city corporations or the municipalities are vital, and we have seen in the case of NUPRP that that really plays a very important role and can bridge the gap. But of course, if I look at the larger context and given the complexity and the rising space of the urbanization, unless and until we have a very progressive another land tenure reform and innovative like the land tenure practices, it's very difficult to really get solutions at a scale. And in terms of the recommendations, if I may, like what I just said, I have three sets or three segments of the recommendations. And first, of course, what I just said is I see is a kind of non-negotiable qualifier that you have to have this cost-effective and sustainability elements in this like community-led adaptation processes if you want to scale them up. And second segment is you need a few more dividends. One is of course the whole issues of inclusiveness, and the inclusivity has to be informed by the principles of inequality. So, for instance, if I take example from the NUPRP, like I see that where women are involved, the process were more robust and sustainable, and we have learned from the experience that women are the best managers at the front line, and that for any poverty reduction or any climate tackling the adversity of the climate change. So I think that and last but not least is of course hold of the issues of the access to the quality data and analytics and the mapping, and for that analytics we is one of the the finest models, and you has presented or at least share some links of that. And in terms of my third segment as a recommendation, if I may, I see that of course has to be the financing. And I think that's most important. We need a sustainable financing mechanism, and which is of course is very essential for a scalable community-led adaptation. And thanks to FCDO for your generosity in supporting this program for many years. But of course, I know that the financing support from the external actors cannot be like a kind of indefinite phenomenon. So that's why the role of state and the local authorities are very vital. And in this particular case, the local authorities in terms of the cities and the municipalities can really play a big role in terms of bridging that gap and promote the community-led adaptation. So we want to see more and more community-led adaptations and community-led process are being supported by the cities. So the cities don't see this kind of process as a project-type activity, rather as a core activity of the city. But of course, I do admit that the city authorities also have a lot of limitations, and that's why the role of private sector and the financing institutions also important. For example, the financing institution like us, like the Economic Development Bank or other financial institutions also can play a big role in this. If I may say a few words about the Economic Development Bank, what we have been doing in Asia, Africa, and Middle East, supporting more than 50 countries, including private sector, with affordable financing, and that includes the grants and concessional loans, and for the urban development and tackling the adverse effects of the climate change. And just to give one example, like in Bangladesh, we have been supporting the BRED, the largest NGO, with a 5-year program, and that offers the urban wash and health in some of the Bihari communities of Dhaka North and the Faithful municipalities. And just to give an example, where BRED has been working with many community-based organizations through the community-led process. So let me conclude by saying that community-led adaptation is great because it's participatory, and it's innovative, and that's why it's always welcoming. However, for a successful scaling up, it's contingent on some like essential qualifiers, and those are blended with like inclusive processes and the sustainability sectors, where indeed the financing plays the most likely instrumental role. With that, let me conclude. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you, Ashik Bhai. You rightly pointed out few things which are really important for this discussion. You pointed out that with the community-led approach, we see often early success in the community, but if it is not linked with sustainability, especially sustainable financing is important. And you basically mentioned some of the examples already from Islamic Development Bank, but with other financing organizations too. So we need to really think about how these aspects of sustainability can be addressed. You also pointed out that the informal nature of urban settlement, actually, it's happening all over the world, but particularly in Bangladesh also, and there are challenges around that too. So any infrastructure development work is often challenged by informal nature of this settlement. So there are no legal documents, so there are various other aspects around that. So this is a valid discussion too. And you also pointed out the equality and inclusion aspect of our work. And you rightly pointed out that how important it is to really empower communities, especially the women, the poorest of the poor who are living in the slum, and bring them in the inclusive development processes. Thank you. We'll come back to you again. Let's see how audience act, and if there are any questions for you, we'll come back to you. Can we go back to Mohammad Jillur Rahman, the mayor of Chatpur municipality? We'd like to hear from you, your experiences of working with the LIUPC project, and what are the challenges you feel as a representative of local government, and what you value most about NUPRP LIUPC project that you are working with. So Jillur Rahman Bhai, can we try again with you?
Thank you. Are you listening me now? Are you listening me now?
Yeah.
Yes,
clear. And
thank you. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to say something before you. I am a newly elected mayor. You know, I have a dream. It's my commitment to my people that I would develop a decent climate resilience town. Our municipality management already have made true partnership with FCDO, UNDP, and community organization in LIUPC project. Through the technical support of LIUPC, we have already developed community organization. 22,500 poor households, especially women of poor settlements, they're involved with this organization. And this organization developed a community action plan, which is called CAP. And we have they identified lacks and gaps of climate vulnerable infrastructures and economic and social issues. They have also been implementing infrastructure interventions and ensuring quality of works with the support from my municipality and LIUPC team. By using different platforms, the governance system of local government institutions have been improving, especially the poor people's voice. They can participate in decision-making process. Chatpur Municipality Management Trust on leadership of community organization, and we are adopting some policies other than the regular routine projects of LIUPC projects. We are already trying to adopt some new projects from our own fund using this community-based leadership and organizations. Your second part of question was my challenges, what the challenges I am facing. The Chatpur is a highly vulnerable town due to climate change, not only due to climate change, due to its geographical position. We are facing climate hazards regularly. So it's a challenge for us, for my municipality, to provide the regular basic services to my citizen. And besides this, 2/3 of our areas are newly added to my municipalities. So they are not getting enough basic services. So it's a challenge for us. Lack of solid waste management is raising unhealthy condition of residential areas, especially urban poor living areas. Due to climate change, people of surrounding rural areas are migrated. I mean, climate refugees is an issue for us. Our geographical position is attract from the surrounded districts migrants to move to Jaipur. And its number is day by day increasing. So it's an issue, it's a challenge for us. So we are trying to mitigate this through our own efforts on strength, and definitely with the help of LIPC project and others, FCDO and NUPRP. So we are another challenges we are facing, this inadequate fund. You know the process that we don't have our revenue is not enough to introduce or to initiate development projects from our own. We need the support of government's fund, others donors, that NGOs funds. So we should be, it's my opinion that as climate vulnerable city, we need special attention. But as we are treating like others municipality, so there's a gaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. We'll come back to you later on, and you shared your life experiences with this program, but with also climate resilient work. It is good to see that you really realize the importance of really empowering the community people, the local leadership that are emerging from the slums in your areas. And we really need champions like you in Bangladesh. So the elected representative at the local government to lead these kind of discussions and processes. And good to see that you recognize the importance of the local leadership here. You also mentioned quite interesting things about climate hazards and how challenging it is for a municipality like Jaipur, especially in the new areas, to provide basic services. The climate refugees are coming because of the geographic location in Jaipur, which is connecting different cities, and there are communications advantages towards that city, and how it is creating a big pressure to your work there. And you also mentioned that the financing is a challenge. So, and mentioned about a collaborative approach, that only government may not be able to do that, only a municipality with their own funding may not be able to do that, and how we can think about developing a collaborative way of financing challenges that a town like Jaipur is facing. So thank you. We'll come back to you. Let's go to our next panelist, who is quite well known. I don't need to introduce him. Professor Nazrul Islam, a renowned scholar in Bangladesh around urban development, urban governance, and he's engaged in many policy level discussions. So our question to you, Professor Nazrul Islam, that how prepared is Bangladesh in relation to climate resilient urban planning? What are the policy challenges to promote locally led adaptation? We heard a lot of stories around that, but means if you think about policy challenges, what are those? And other things that from the city, corporation, and municipality, many of the times we heard that there are money for mega projects, but they do not often have money to implement projects in the poor communities, which is small or medium infrastructure actually, and they do struggle around that. And what kind of learning we can take forward in policy discussions from here? So we'd like to hear from you, Professor Nazrul Islam.
Thank you very much, Anwar. very glad to be in this panel discussion today on climate change and adaptation in Bangladesh. First of all, I would like to congratulate or say hello to Ashik out there in Dhaka, long distance from Dhaka. Both cities have almost similar sounding names. Sometimes postal service get confused. So I'm happy to see you. Unfortunately, I could not hear clearly what you said, but the summary made by Anwar, I think, was useful. And I'm extremely happy to see here Jildur Rahman, Honorable Mayor of Chandpur Municipality, such a young man and so good in articulation, in making himself clear about his city's problems. Actually, my ancestral home, where I was born, is just across Chandpur town, on the other side of the river, on the western side, which is in Shariatpur district. And I'm about 83 years old now. I was born in a river chor, river island. And in my childhood, I experienced at least 2 times erosion-led problem when our houses had to be moved from one location to another. And we are back in that chor. Is now a little bit semi-permanent, about 80 years old. And we have just built one pakka house there for the first time. All these years, we had only tin houses, which could be dismantled and taken away to another place. So that was the adaptation in those days. Anyway, the question that you raised, and also congratulations to our sisters, Fatima and what's her name? The first speaker. They narrated their stories in their towns. Anyway, Murshidabad. So your question, how prepared is Bangladesh in relation to climate resilient urban planning? As you all know, Bangladesh is extremely aware of the climate problem, climate change related problem. Even when this term climate change was not much in vogue, we used to say natural hazards. All kinds of hazards except volcanic eruption we have in Bangladesh. The biggest ones are, of course, flooding, then cyclone, river erosion, drought, and so on. And also hills have problems. Coastal areas, salinity is a big problem. You mentioned earlier somebody. So the people of Bangladesh are fully aware of the climate hazards. Bangladesh government is also aware of this. And the government is recognized and fully aware of the climate change impacts. And as you know, the Ministry of Environment has already been renamed. It's called Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. I don't know which other government in the world has included the term climate change in their ministry's name. That shows the awareness of the government and the willingness to do something in this regard. And the government has also established a climate fund to combat or to face climate change related problems. And the documents that we see, for example, the 5-year plans, the chapters on environment are clear and they recognize the climate change issue. The 20-year perspective plans, they also recognize. And finally, also the Bangladesh Delta Plan, which is a very, very long-term plan until 2100. That means it was a 100-year long plan. So all these plans, the 5-year plan, the Delta plan, which is very long-term, very futuristic, they recognize the climate change issue, the impacts. And I mention this only to emphasize that the government is theoretically very aware, and they have also made recommendations to combat climate change related problems over a long period of time. Now, in terms of urban resilience, there are also some projects, programs on resilient cities, including in Dhaka. I have in front of me in the desk a document called Dhaka Structure Plan, 2016 to 2035. Otherwise, it's called the master plan. So 20-year master plan or structure plan. It has a chapter, a long chapter on climate change and resilience, climate resilience, or you can say disaster problems and how to face the disasters, including climate change related disaster. So on paper, I think the government is very much aware and they show their awareness. But the problem is in implementation, the recommendation. Oh, I should also mention another document, the National Urban Policy, which we prepared. Ashik was very much involved when he was in UNDP Dhaka, the urban forum, National Urban Forum we had in 2013, I think. And there is a long document, National Urban Policy. The government has updated it 2014, a little bit shorter and more readable. But unfortunately, this policy has not yet been adopted by the government. But it has been incorporated in the 8th 5-year plan, as well as in the long-term plans. So on paper, theoretically, the government and cities like Dhaka, they show awareness and they have plans to face the urban, the climate change issues within the urban areas. But in terms of implementation, I think they're very slow and sometimes not handling it properly. The second question you raised about municipalities or city corporations complaining that big money is available for mega projects and not available for urban projects like facing or combating the urban climate issues. I think in general, this is quite correct, but also we have exceptions. For example, I understand Chittagong city received a lot of money, big money, in combating the drainage problem, in intrusion of seawater through the Karnafuli River, and so on, particularly waterlogging. And they have not been able to successfully utilize the funds. So it is true in general that most cities do not get adequate funds. But when they get, whether they are using it properly or at all perceptibly. So this is a problem. Dhaka also has in the structure plan, which was prepared in 2015, but still not approved, whereas they are going for the detailed area plan. So the structure plan, as I said, they have devoted one whole chapter about the disaster resilience. But the local level planning or implementation is slow. There is one project which has been nominated or which has been approved or at least recommended. That is to save Dhaka's flooding by construction of a long eastern embankment bypass. Actually, the water, I think the water board, they wanted to have an embankment, solid embankment, like the city has one in the west, the flood embankment project implemented. They also wanted to have one like this in the eastern Dhaka margin, but the approved by the Delta plan does not recommend or accept the solid embankment. Rather, they're going for a viaduct so that rainwater can easily flush out and get into this Lokha river, finally the Meghna or Padda. So that is a welcome thing, but that is a very long-term project. Implementation has not yet started. So the first question, whether Bangladesh is prepared or are they combating the climate resilient issue, climate issue, change issue properly? I think they are quite aware and trying to do something, but not, I should say, not enough. Not for the all cities. All cities or municipalities are expected to have their own city master plans. And I hope they will include, some of them have already done, they will include the disaster resilience issue or the climate change issue. And the second question, that mega projects are available for, say, 4-lane, 6-lane highways or bridges, long bridges, tunnels, metros, etc. That is partly true, but whenever they're given big funds, they do not show the ability or the sincerity in implementing those. But I will again say that, yes, there should be more funds available for urban waterlogging problem solution, combating flood, etc. I think the two issues you have asked me to respond on, I have given my opinion, the comments, and if there is anything else, I can come back to it. So thank you very much.
Professor thank you. I think you again have provided lots of insights around policy issues, and we all recognize that Bangladesh is always good in forming policies, and our documentations are great, and it shows commitment, of course. But you also have pointed out the slowness of implementation. I also pointed out an important aspect that even the local government, they may not have the capacity or the skills or human resources actually to take forward the important discussion that are happening. Even if the financing is available, money is available, even carrying this forward is a struggle. So you have brought the example of Chattogram, how it suffered actually. So thank you again. We have another panelist. Happy to have Anju Sharma, who is leading the locally led adaptation in Global Center for Adaptation. Welcome, Anju Sharma, in our discussion. We'll straight go to the questions. We're running out of our time. So if you can briefly share with us that how relevant a program like NUPRP that empowers the poorest and the most marginalized, and also collaboratively work with local government from global adaptation discussion, how relevant it is, and what the role an organization like GSA can play to promote promising practices around locally led and locally owned adaptation practices. We'd like to hear from you. Anju, hope you're here.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Clearly. Please carry on.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this really interesting panel. Thanks FCDO and UNDP. Well, how important is a project like NUPRP? I think there's absolutely no question that it's vital. We had in February the IPCC 6th assessment report that came out, and there was an entire chapter there, chapter 6, which focused on how important cities are becoming. I think some of us in this panel will remember a time when it used to be mainly rural issues that were of key importance, but that has changed very quickly, and now the AR6 points out that most of the world's population lives in 6 cities, as much as 4.2 billion. And much of this growth has been in LDCs. It's been in cities that are in fragile locations along coasts in Asia and Africa. So it's basically the growth has been in cities where the adaptive capacity is very limited. And this is, the fact that these cities have unplanned and informal settlements make them all the more vulnerable to climate change. So a project like NUPRP is really key. Some of the points have already been made that were also made in the IPCC report, that on the one hand, most of the impacts are felt by the socially and economically marginalized, but they are not included in planning processes. So there's no co-production, there's no involvement of these marginalized communities in the planning. Where there are plans, they're not consulted. As has been said, that a lot of cities now increasingly have climate adaptation plans, but the problem is implementation. So this is not a particularly Bangladeshi problem. It's a problem in many parts of the world where implementing these plans is a problem because funding is not available, because access to funds is an issue for governments, local governments with limited capacities. So, and where there is funding, it's often focused on large-scale gray physical infrastructure. So these are all problems that we are well aware of. Now, what can GCA do? Well, I think at the GCA, as you know, we're a fairly new organization, started in 2020, and our goal very much is not to reinvent the wheel, but to learn from the immense experience already on the ground. And not just from projects like NUPRP, but I think the decades of experience we've already had in the development context, where we know what the issues are in terms of devolution, in terms of locally led practices, and how to address them. So as some of you may be aware, we've also received funding from FCDO recently to launch our global hub on locally led adaptation in Dhaka, in our regional office in Dhaka. And one of our first activities, pretty much, GCA also has a program, a larger program on urban, a program on nature-based solutions, focus on large infrastructure. But one of our first sort of areas of focus for this global hub on LLA has been urban areas. And what we've sort of tried to do is to find these best practices which will inform our future investments. Our focus is going to be very much on achieving that speed and scale that many people have talked about, that, instead of these fragmented islands of progress, we need somehow to bring these efforts together, match them with the big money, and scale them up very quickly. So just to give you a very quick example, we've one of our first activities in locally led adaptation was to start building a toolkit on an experience in Mukuru, which is a very large slum in Nairobi in Kenya, where they demonstrated not just a very deeply locally led process, but also one that has lessons, I think, not just for cities, but perhaps even countries. Because what they managed to do, on the one hand, was have a process, where, like in NUPRP, they achieved depth of participation. They went down to the household level, to the individual level. They also were able to work very closely with the government, because Kenya has a new constitution, which is very sort of strong on devolution. So they had a very willing Nairobi County Council that worked very closely. And it was a question of political will. A lot of people have mentioned that, dealing with informal settlements, it's going to take political commitment. There are very high stakes there. Those areas are expensive. So, it was recognized in Nairobi that this is a very crowded slum. The provision of services is going to be difficult. So the way they went about it was first make it locally led. So they had the communities on board. They went through a consultation process back and forth, where they started off with something like, 80% rehabilitation would be required to provide basic services in this slum. In consultation, they managed to reduce that to less than 20%. And they also had then the consent of the people or individuals that had to, give up and provide the land. What they did really well was something that we all struggle to do even at the national level, which is to achieve intersectorality. So the communities identified the 7 or 8 sectors that were really important for them. And then these issues were addressed together. So the mayor of Chandpur, for instance, mentioned the problem of waste management. And I think we often, ignore the fact that waste management is so closely related to flooding and to water management. So this is exactly what they did. They made these connections and ensured that it was a plan that was not only sort of spoke to each other in its components, but also related to Nairobi's master plan. And this is a big issue because often these master plans, Professor Islam mentioned them, they don't really make reference to informal settlements, or the planning rules in cities, they're difficult to implement in informal settlements where there's lack of space. So in Nairobi, they made this commitment. They declared it a special planning area so that they could, adapt the planning processes to their particular circumstances. So you need those kind of sort of flexibility from governments as well. There's a lot more, and I hope we'll soon have like a detailed toolkit to share with you. But just to tell you that one of our first activities in Bangladesh also has been to address one of the problems that the mayor referred to, which is that of internal climate migrants. And we're initiating a project with BRAC to look at this problem of climate migrants, look at the work that's already been done in Bangladesh, whether it's NUPRP or the work that BRAC has done or other cities have done, and then sort of look at how this can perhaps be also an opportunity for secondary cities and towns in Bangladesh, and how we can help build a resilience and make these towns safer, not just for the residents, but also climate migrants in future. So I'll stop there and I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Anju. So you have pointed out various issues that are important, but more importantly, we are very happy to hear that GCA is willing to listen from partners like BRAC, UNDP, and others who are working in the urban areas in Bangladesh and learn from there. And as you mentioned, that is a bigger challenge we all have. I think, as IPCC mentioned, that most of the impacts are felt by the marginalized communities, but they are rarely discussed, they are rarely consulted, they have rarely the chance to raise voices. And any kind of adaptation processes, there could be big mistakes around that. We learn from the history. So there are like embankments made, and that becomes like a trap for larger communities. It's not new to our learning there. But I think more importantly, also said that we all are discussing around that large scale infrastructure investment are happening because of a lot of bigger discussions that are happening. But the struggle for the communities are still there. And we heard from your experience in Nairobi, which is quite good. And we need to learn, and hopefully that GCA will create more opportunities for champions like our mayor in Chandpur to really learn from other areas how the city corporations or municipalities are managing for example, solid waste, the various other aspects of waste management, which is related to various other problems. So also good to know that Bangladesh office is now fully operational. Hope and your focus would be at the primary stage on the urban areas. So there will be opportunities. We can hear more from you. Now, let's have a quick look at the chat bar and other things. I think in the question answer, Mr. Wahed has asked a question and already that is answered in the chat bar. So we'll not go into that. There are some questions, I think one question from Polash. He's mentioning about that, okay, we have heard from the Fatima that there are inclusion in the standing committees and others, and so what kind of benefits are these bringing to the communities? So I don't know whether still we have Fatima Appa here. Fatima Appa, আপনি কি প্রশ্নটা বুঝতে পারছেন তো? প্রশ্নটা হচ্ছে যে এই যে বিভিন্ন কমিটিতে আপনারা ইনক্লুডেড হয়েছেন, এটার ফলে কি কি ধরনের সুযোগ সুবিধা আপনাদের কমিউনিটিতে আসছে, আপনারা এখান থেকে কি উপকৃত হয়েছেন কিনা একটু সংক্ষেপে যদি বলেন। আমরা we have already running out of time, sorry to participants, we may have to run for another 5 minutes, so please stay with us.
স্যার আমরা ওয়ার্ড পর্যায়ে যে কমিটিগুলো আছে ওই কমিটি থেকে চাঁদপুর পৌরসভার সর্বোচ্চ ফোরাম যেটি টিএলসিসি সেখানেও আছি এবং ওইখানে আমরা দরিদ্র জনগোষ্ঠীর প্রতিনিধিত্ব করি। পৌর বাজেটে আমাদের জন্য 30% অর্থ রাখা হয়েছে যে আমরা যে সমস্যাগুলো বলবো সেটা পর্যায়ক্রমে সমাধান করার জন্য। এমনকি আরেকটি প্রস্তাব আমাদের পৌর মেয়রকে দেওয়া হয়েছে যে এই যে বজ্র নিরসন যেটা সেটার ইয়েতে যে অংশীদারিত্ব ব্যাপারটা আমরা বজ্র ব্যবস্থাপনার ক্ষেত্রে আমরা কমিটিগুলোতে যেন কাজ করতে পারি সেটা নিয়ে মেয়র মহোদয়ের সাথে আমাদের একটি কথা হয়েছে।
Okay, thank you, Appa. Let me translate it in English. So she basically saying that they are part of the ward level committee, community level committee to town level coordination committee, which is a bigger structure. And they have been able to negotiate that 30% of their budget should be allocated for the poorer slums and communities, which is itself is an achievement. They are also negotiating with the city corporations that how the local level community leaders can be engaged into the solid waste management processes. So they are seeing like their involvement and that are bringing benefits to the communities, but also to the local leaders who are involved into this process. So again, we do not have time here to discuss further, but already mentioned by Yogesh and KZ that if you want to learn more about UNDP, you can basically go to their website, but feel free to also contact UNDP if you want to further continue this discussion. Sorry again, we'll have to shut down right now. I am giving the floor back to Farjan Appa for the concluding remarks. Thank you all. And I would like to also thank all the panelists here for your brilliant presentation discussion. It is quite useful. We have all benefited from this discussion and we'll continue to take this discussion forward in coming days. Over to you, Farjan Appa.
Thank you, Anwar Bhai. Such an insightful session. And I hope everyone were able to take something on from it. I'd like to highlight very quickly to 3 points that I take away from this actually. So just to summarize, from the discussion, from the presentation, it was quite clear that how women can be forced for good in increasing climate resilience as well as driving locally led adaptation practices. Secondly, we all heard about how critical sustained financing is. There is a lot of financing available for mega big infrastructures, but when it comes to small scale locally led adaptation interventions, we often suffer. And linked with that, actually, when there are financing from central government, we also need to think about, those financing need to come with associated capacity building for those municipalities as well as city corporations to be able to spend them. I think we heard loud and clear from the mayor of Chatpur that how we can't do a template type exercise for all cities and towns because some actually suffer due to climate change, some suffer due to their geographical location. So a blanket approach to central funding or development funding doesn't work. And again, linked to that, Anju's, we've also heard like how actually not only socioeconomically, how scientifically it's also important to think about city planning and challenges that are becoming even more critical in the cities, like waste management, water management, which are very interlinked. So I hope you enjoyed the session. With this note, I'm going to invite the acting resident rep of UNDP, Ms. Van Nugen, to make some concluding remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fazana. And my very, very warm greetings to all the panel members, and special greetings to the new Development Director of FCDO, Mr. Matt Cannell, and a very warm greeting to my former colleague, Ashek, who is very, very far away from us right now. And I also would like to send my special greeting to Professor Nasrul Islam. Whenever I listen to you, I always feel so inspired and learning so much. And today I also have a very special feeling when I listen to Mr. Mohammed Zilur Rahman, when you talk about your dream, you know, and I was thinking that, yes, so we are here together and let's make your dream come true. So I am asked to say a couple of words as my token of appreciation to the organizer of the event, in particular, I would like to say thank you to the Gobeshona team for providing us a platform that based on which that we had a very rich discussion today, and I hope that you have been able to follow the conversation, and you have been able to take note of all those very important points. And of course, you know, to all my great team members, thank you so much for pulling it off, and to our dear Fazana and Onowa for your guidance and support and participations in this dialogue. So if I may, I would like to share with you a couple of points, which is very much, you know, linked to my own personal experience, and that is very deep down that that it always comes to me whenever I listen to discussions or dialogues around the urban issues. So I remember when I first arrived in Bangladesh 2.5 years ago, one of the first incidents that I came to know, and it was quite a devastating. It was a fire that broke out in one quarter of the urban slum in Dhaka. So it was really shocking to me, and I felt so sorry for those people who live in that place. And then overnight, you know, everything, very little thing they had, and everything got lost. So that is really one of the things that it sticks into my mind whenever we discuss our work related to NUPRP with colleagues here. So the second thing that I remember that one day I was in the car with Ashek. Actually, we got stuck in the traffic, and we were talking a lot about anything and everything. And one of the things we discussed, and we would passionately, was about how we can you know, improve the life of the urban poor in those cities. And I shared with Ashek, you know, the experience that I have been observing, you know, back in Vietnam, you know, with how the government, together with the UN agency, that came together to support, you know, the policy, the development of a migration policy, and that migration policy has tremendously improve, you know, life of those migrants. And that I would see that our urban poor here in Dhaka, and of course in Chittagong, Chattogram, many of them are migrant, climate refugees or climate migrants. Linked to that is I was also thinking about the COVID-19 that we have been experiencing, and again, I just want to share with you what happened in Vietnam back home is that, you know, the government has been struggling with the social housing for the poor. You know, after so many years, the plan is there, the policy is there, but we couldn't pull it off. And only now with COVID-19, and when all the factory had to shut down because all those workers they live in those urban slums where the quality of life, when the hygiene and everything were not conducive, would not have them to protect from COVID-19. And that is where the government, together with private sector, those factories, now they join force. And now, hopefully, that social housing, you know, big project that would be that I see that now. I see the future and the hope for this social housing. I shared with you those very small stories. That is just to say that when we talk about the urban policy, the urban issues, it is so comprehensive, and if we want to address those issues, and if we want to improve life of our people, you know, there needs to be a comprehensive master plan. And then only having the master plan will not be enough. Of course, we will need to have, you know, find the financing, and financing has to come not only from the government, but also from private sector, from the communities themselves. And then linked to that is the key critical roles that women play in those activities, in those interventions. You know, I am always overwhelmed, and I would like to invite Mart, you know, to join us in one of those visits when we are meeting with our beneficiary. I am always impressed and positively impressed with how confident our female community leaders and beneficiary are confidently talking with us, sharing with us about their experience. And you see right here, right now, that, you know, when we listen to Mosheda and Fatima. So with this, you know, it is not only hardware, you know, infrastructure, but very much software. That is this is about leaving no one behind. This is about women empowerment, and this is about, you know, raising quality of life for not only urban poor, but for everyone in this country. Now, lastly, I would not want to take too much time from us, and knowing that today is Thursday, the very last day before before we start our Ramadan. This is to say that, you know, many times we see that, you know, we have been doing fantastic work, but we are not very good at documenting, disseminating, and advocating for all those good practices, good lessons. And so that this event is one of the opportunities that I'm very pleased to see, that we not only share our knowledge, our wisdom, but also hopefully that we document, and then we would be able to also share with other countries, other projects, other colleagues who are also facing the same problems like we do, and that is towards the very right direction of the knowledge management, so that we are not losing all those good work that we have been investing so far over the last 15 years. Yeah. And on that note, I would like to say thank you so much to the government of Bangladesh for allowing us, UNDP, to work in this area. And of course, special thanks to FCDO for being our companion, you know, partnering with us and going with us, being with us over the last 15 years. This journey is really rewarding, I would say, challenging, but rewarding. And I look forward to further in the future exchanges, and then I look forward to meet you sometime, you know, in person, hopefully. Until then, Ramadan Mubarak. Thank you very much.